Good morning! Today was a little bit of a slow morning. It's been raining on and off, so it's just kind of slept in past sunrise. Had a nice cup of coffee, breakfast. Well, I ate breakfast, Corey didn't. And now Corey's getting the boat ready while I'm finishing to dry some dishes. So it's probably gonna rain again, which is why Corey's putting the tarp on.
Prepping the old tarp. Let's stay a little dry. It's actually raining just slightly right now. But this little piece of tarp makes all the difference. And then, of course, we have the Dodger here for another little protection.
We're waiting for an answer.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And is it okay to tie up on the port side?
We try to radio all of the lock masters ahead of time just to make sure that the lock is ready for us heading east and to double check which side we have to tie onto. Most of them you can choose either side, there's no issue, but the last one, lock 22, we had to tie up on the port side pretty much last minute because nobody answered us. So
well, I mean, it's understandable. They were doing work on the starboard side, so there was no way to tie up to the starboard side. But we just didn't know until the very last minute.
So it's kind of interesting communicating with the lock masters. You have half of them that talk a bunch, answer the radio, and are very nice and just give you lots of information. And then you also have the other half that just never really answers. And you just show up in the lock and they're like, hey, there's somebody. It's like, yeah, we've been trying to radio you for a couple of times. It's not fair, I don't see with my eye. The fall is coming. We're running away through the locks. And you can see all the turbulence.
Yeah, there's a lot behind you. And up we go!
This is our last lock going up.
So apparently those lights right there on that blue thing are the speed. So when all the lights are lit up, all the lights are lit, it means we're at max flow.
Really speeds.
A little bit of debris in the locks. We are in Rome, Italy. Rome, New York. We haven't explored yet, but it seems like it's gonna be a pretty cool spot. We're gonna go get some groceries and just explore around a little bit. Let's do it.
Did you know that this is actually where the Erie Canal began in 1817? And they didn't have the machinery that we had back in those days, so they actually dug the whole canal by hand. And there's so many different types of inventions that were created just so that they could create this canal, from like dead trunks, pulling machines. And there's quite a few immigrants that traveled to the canal and I would get paid, I think it was like $12 for the month, and being fed and lodged to create all of this? This is just insane. Blows my mind. It's pretty crazy. This fort was built, but really was only attacked once, and it was supposed to be to prevent the Frenchmen to come in the country.
The guy posted here was very friendly and telling us lots of really neat stuff about this fort. I actually, coming here, I wasn't super impressed. It was a cool structure, of course, but without any of the backstory, you really don't know just how interesting the place is. One of the stories that kind of stands out was there was 2 women here with hundreds of soldiers, and actually by the end of the war, there was 3 women here because one of the women gave birth, and actually the labor was induced, well, maybe not induced, but anyway, the lady had given birth when shortly after being shot with an exploding cannonball, which took out a fairly large chunk of I guess her backside or her butt, and then later, while she was being patched up, gave birth to her child. And that was in this cool little barricaded hallway. You go down this hallway that zigzags, and I supposedly that is meant if there was ever an explosion on the outside, it wouldn't continue down and penetrate deeper into the hallway. And there's just this really cozy little nook down there that's meant as a hospital and to store, I guess, gunpowder and things like that. But really, really neat sort of place. I'm not really all that one for war history and stuff like that, but it's fascinating to hear all of the story and how this thing is built with wood, but it's still very solid and very, it's wood, and then in between it there's 10 feet of dirt and then more wood. So even if you would think, well, you could light it on fire from the outside, well, good luck, because it's all just filled with moist dirt on the inside, so it would be very difficult to light on fire without some sort of accelerant or something. But anyway, just lots of really cool history. Come on, let me out. I only wanted to leave the war. I didn't want to shoot guns. Anyway, imagine living here during the war. Apparently some of these rooms, not this one in particular, but had, hundreds of soldiers sleeping on grass and stuff like that. Guys. It's a miserable day today. It's probably no more than 10 degrees. It's raining and it's windy. All of the trifecta of terribleness to be moving on a boat right now. But we decided we wanted to go, and it wasn't raining this morning. So that's what we have to deal with. This last section, I can't believe how much debris there was in the water. We're just zigzagging through all these deadheads and logs and everything, and Yeah, anyway, not the best of locks to enter and exit out of. The exit was much cleaner though than the entrance.
What's going on?
Oh, there's a dredge up here and there's another boat coming by. There's some cables in the under the water, so I'm just gonna let this other boat go by, do a little loop-to-loop, because we gotta stay nice and close to the dredge to avoid hitting his cables. So we just passed a barge-looking thing with some pipes hanging off the back. We passed one earlier, but I had no idea what the thing was. And luckily it just happened to move out of our way enough for me to pass between the red marker and the barge. But it turns out it's actually a dredge. So I guess they're dredging the bottom in the shallow sections and pulling up any debris and stuff like that that is in the water. Just give me 1 second. Just adjusting the autopilot. All right. And so, as you can tell, it's pouring rain today. But yeah, so when I was passing that dredge back there, I overheard on the radio there was a westbound boat coming through, and he asked for directions, or, you know, basically just making sure it was okay to pass the dredge. And I didn't realize that was maybe sort of protocol to do before you pass the dredge. But now I know what the dredge looks like, so I can actually radio them and find out if it's okay to pass or not. The reason why it's good to know this is because he informed the other boat that he should pass as close to the dredge as possible to avoid any of the underwater cables, I guess, that is supporting the dredge to the shoreline, or stopping it and keeping it in place. So you definitely want to check with them before you pass, not like the last time I passed him, or when I passed the old one.
What just happened?
Oh, we just hit bottom. A pretty good, like, worse than the last one. Was down below 3 feet. That's really annoying. Come on, dredge, come over here, dredge over here. That sucked. I was perfectly in line with everything. At first I thought, well, maybe it was just they didn't dredge that section, it was a little bit shallow. But then I realized I actually passed on the wrong side of the green marker. The marker was way over on the left side, and normally, you know, it's kind of, you know, the sides come in a little bit with the markers, but this one was like the red marker was onshore and the green marker was about 10 feet away from that onshore marker, and just wasn't thinking. I was just talking to the camera before that, and I wasn't paying attention, and I happened to go on the wrong side of the darn marker. So we hit something, I think it was mud at first, and slowed the boat down, and then we hit something bigger and more shallow, and we went like over it. We could feel the actual whole hull lift up. Luckily, none of the bolts or anything, nothing in the bilge seems to have any issues. But man, that was nerve-wracking, and I feel pretty stupid for doing it. So pay attention. So I don't feel quite as bad. It was very stupid of me to go on the wrong side of the marker. But then about 5 minutes later, in the middle of the canal, no markers, nothing, and we basically ran aground for the second time in a very short period of time. So I'm starting to get used to running aground. Luckily, so far, it hasn't been too solid, and our boat hasn't come to a complete stop, but it's still not a fun feeling.
Good morning. We're in Little Falls. Yesterday was a bit of a write-off. We showed up here around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was just raining, and the whole evening pretty much rained. So we stayed in the boat, did a couple of things, and ended up going in Little Falls for supper. Found that awesome little brewery, which was called, what was it? Copper Moose Ale House. Super good food and beers and everything. And the town looks awesome, so today is actually way nicer. It's not quite cold, but it's not raining. So we're actually gonna head back in town and check out all the cool architecture and buildings and little rapids and whatnot, because it was dark and wet, so we didn't get to fully enjoy it all. So let's go see this. I'm so excited. We found that awesome little bakery and we bought some fresh bread that was just put on the tray and a bunch of different goodies. Lots of pastries, so it should be good.